It's too much. They can't handle it.
Do you shop till you drop?
They're really overwhelmed. They don't know what to do.
You're not alone.
Many Americans are financing the American dream on credit.
Here's how to keep your cash.
Look at your budget like your GPS.
Learn how to protect your finances.
It is freedom. It is joy.
On today's 700 Club.
Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We have presidential candidate Jeb Bush to talk about what he'd like to do in the Middle East. We've got some other things, but it's anything but a happy new year so far on Wall Street. Stocks got off to their worst start in 8 years on Monday. But oil prices, interestingly enough, have stayed relatively low because of the surplus, and despite all the turmoil that's going on in the Middle East.
Financial markets around the world have been hit hard in the first couple of days of 2016. So what's behind the sell-off? Well, as Dale Hurd reports, many people are pointing the finger at China.
Poor manufacturing reports from China and the U.S. suggesting slow growth around the world were among the triggers for the stock market sell-off that started the new year. Global markets remained weaker today, even as China's benchmark stock index stabilized after plunging nearly 7% Monday. Trading was temporarily halted by new curbs that kick in if markets move too fast. U.S. stocks took a pounding on the first day of the year, with the Dow closing down 276 points after falling nearly 470 points during the day. The drop is causing some to wonder if 2016 will be the year the bull market ends. Investment manager Tim Anderson says investors were spooked by fears about China's market.
When their market was extremely volatile in the summer, they put a 6-month ban of selling stocks on very large holders, you might say, and that ban is set to come off very shortly.
The sell-off was also pinned on Chinese manufacturing data that shrank for a 10th month. But many experts are still optimistic. This German stock analyst says, once we leave the first few weekdays behind us, I'm certain that the German DAX will gain significantly again this year, because we still have low interest rates. Tensions in the Middle East also have investors nervous. Saudi Arabia severed diplomatic relations with Iran over the weekend in a dispute over the Saudis' execution of a Shiite cleric. Despite those concerns, oil prices are still staying low. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Well, in my humble opinion, I believe that oil prices will spike. There is a glut of them. The tankers are full. The tanks are almost to capacity. But it won't be long. And if China is having a problem, and it's one of our big customers for crude, then it won't be long before the price of oil. But the forecast, my feeling is this thing is going to escalate. The Sunni-Shia divide in the Muslim world is going to exacerbate, and I just cannot believe that somebody isn't going to try to blow up the oil refineries and the oil fields in Saudi Arabia. And of course, the Iranian oil depot at Harj Island will be something that will be in flames as well. So that whole area could be in flames, and if that's the case and the Straits of Hormuz are locked up, who knows what's going to happen to the oil of the world. Well, in other news, the president is intent on putting through a so-called progressive program. And he said, despite what Congress does, I'm going to take executive action on gun control. John Jessup has that.
Pat, that's right. The president's new measures are aimed at closing what's called the gun show loophole. Still, President Obama admits the move would have a limited effect.
This is not going to solve every violent crime in this country. It's not going to prevent every mass shooting. It will potentially save lives.
Now, critics say his proposal wouldn't have stopped major gun attacks in recent years and argue that he's overstepping his authority. Republican presidential candidates promise to repeal his actions if they're elected. Well, President Ronald Reagan used to say government isn't the solution, it's the problem. 30 years later, Americans apparently agree. A new survey from Gallup shows that in 2015, Americans considered government the biggest problem facing the country today. 16% rank government as the top problem in the nation, with the economy at number 2. And Pat, Americans also rank government as the biggest problem last year in 2014.
Well, believe me, they've just set a new record of federal regulations put in place. It is choking and strangling the economy. And this, of course, is what the progressives want. They want government to run everything. And our people are smart enough to realize government is the problem. It isn't the solution. Well, we talked to somebody, and Terry's going to tell us about it.
Well, up next, Governor Jeb Bush talks about Donald Trump, Saudi Arabia and Iran, the war on ISIS, and more. Watch Pat's exclusive interview with the presidential candidate. It's coming up right after this.
Well, after all the polls and all the campaigning, in just a few weeks, Republican voters will finally start to have their say in Iowa. And after that, New Hampshire. On Monday, I spoke with one of the key figures in the Republican presidential race, former Florida Governor Jeb Bush. And we talked about the crisis in the Middle East, Islamic terrorism, and President Obama's foreign policy. I also asked him why the Republican candidates aren't going after their frontrunner, Donald Trump, and hitting him in his weaknesses like bankruptcies and some of his business dealings.
Well, people have tried, including myself, and the simple fact is that he controlled these businesses and claims that it was effective, being an effective business person to go bankrupt, when in fact, not only did he lose money, but more importantly, a lot of small businesses lost money, a lot of creditors lost money, a lot of employees lost their jobs, and banks that lent him money foolishly lost money as well. That's not a sign of a successful person. That's a sign of someone who's failed, and he failed 3 times, as you mentioned. It's across the spectrum of his life that gives me some concern. Look, the guy's an incredible marketer. He's a great showman. He does block the sun in terms of political activity, but he is not a conservative. He, until recently, was a close friend of the Clintons, gave them money both to the foundation and to the campaign. His views on taxes, on regulation, on guns, on abortion, and many other issues does not make him a conservative. This is all a game. I'm not sure what the end result is, but I don't believe he's a serious candidate. He's a great marketer, but I don't believe he's a serious candidate, and I don't think he should be president of the United States.
It looks like to me you could get some people who had been laid off because of bankruptcies to go on camera and talk about it and get some emotion out. It doesn't seem to be anybody doing that. I don't understand it.
Well, I think part of this is the mainstream media loves the attention that he gives them. We're all part of some reality TV show, Dr. Robertson. It's kind of a very unusual situation. But as I said, look, he's had success in his business career for sure, and he's had some real abject failures. And he sloughs it off, and there's no investigative reporting to point out the obvious.
Well, in any event, so it's coming up, and somebody, because he's going to walk away with some of the prizes unless somebody trips him up. Let me ask you, though, in the news, as you know, the divide between the Sunnis and the Shias is very profound, and it's now ruptured between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Now, Bahrain has come in, the Emirates have come in, Sudan has come in on the side of the Saudis. Do you think the U.S. should get into that dogfight or just stay on the side and let them fight it out?
Well, we should not allow for a religious war in the Middle East. It would be devastating. Imagine a radical Islamic terrorist group on top of Mecca and Medina, which is one of their ultimate goals. Imagine controlling the oil reserves and the financial resources of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has existed and has been supported by a security umbrella of the United States for more than 50 years, and that's now been torn asunder with the agreement with Iran. And as we legitimize the Iranian regime, the Saudis don't feel the United States has their back anymore. And that security of American leadership, once it was abandoned by this president, is partially the reason why we have this upheaval. and no one can condone the execution of anyone for political views, which is what's happened in Saudi Arabia. But this should not be a surprise. When the United States abandoned basically the commitment they've made to the Persian Gulf Arab countries, you see now the result of this, where both in Yemen and other places we have upheaval. And Iran continues to be the largest sponsor of state sponsor of terrorism in the world. This agreement, which is a legacy-building objective for President Obama, is an abject failure, and his legacy will be one that's really tarnished because of it.
Well, as president, would you repudiate that deal? Actually, it hasn't been vetted by the Senate, so it's not really a treaty. What is it? I mean, what legal status will it have?
It's an agreement. It's not a treaty, and it can be undone exactly for the reasons you just described. And certainly, irrespective of the agreement, we have a responsibility to also enforce resolutions and sanctions on other elements of our relationship with Iran. They've begun to launch ballistic missile testing, which is in direct violation. They continue to hold Americans hostage in their country. We got nothing in return in that regard. They suppress their own people. And as I said, they now will have relief of economic sanctions to allow them to have over $100 billion to continue to support Hezbollah and the groups in Yemen and other parts of, and certainly in Syria, where they are propping up the Assad regime. And we have to confront their ambitions and make sure that the United States re-engages in this part of the world, or we're going to have chaos. And the chaos will not be anything we can just say, well, let's just pull back and not worry about it. We have to worry about it. But for us, who?
Let me ask you about the war against ISIS. You know, the president called it the JV's team. He studiously avoids the term Islamic terrorism, and yet it is Islamic, and the ISIS is Islamic State. That's what their name is, yet he won't call them the Islamic State. How would you fight ISIS?
Well, I had a chance in August, before the tragedy of Paris and the tragic killings in San Bernardino, to lay out a plan, and it would be to hit them in the caliphate, to restrict their financial resources and do all the things that, of course, we need to do, but also militarily destroy them. And I believe we can do that by embedding our existing troops in Iraq with the Iraqi military, by directly arming the Kurds, by re-engaging with the Sunni tribal leaders, by getting the lawyers off the backs of the warfighters. We have this incredible number of restrictions on the warfighting because, as you said correctly, this is, the president can't even call it for what it is. It's Islamic terrorism, and they've declared war on us, and we have restrictions as though this is, the civil liberties of people have to be taken into consideration. And in Syria, we need a no-fly zone and safe zones to provide protection for the refugees, but more importantly, to create a united front to destroy ISIS in the caliphate and to bring about regime change in Syria. And that will require American leadership, not as the world's policeman, but leading in a way that garners a unified effort amongst the Turks, the Jordanians, the Saudis, the Emiratis, and other Egyptians, because this is their fight as well. And it should be Syrian-led, Sunni-dominated, but the United States has to be engaged with our special operators and with our Air Force capabilities. We need to be engaged with much more intelligence capabilities than what we have today. And we need, if President of the United States, I would ask the commanders not to put restrictions on them. I would ask them what the options are for most effectively destroying ISIS and go about it.
Well, as I understand, sorties go out loaded with bombs, and because of some environmental constraints, they have to turn around and keep their ordnance on board and take it back to their bases. Is that the way it's been?
It has been. That's part of the problem. We send out flyers to truck drivers that are selling illicit oil to Turkey and to actually the Assad regime, if you can believe that. We send flyers out to warn them that they're about ready to be bombed, as though that somehow they're not complicit in being part of the ISIS brigade. And secondly, there's 2 or 3 levels of approvals necessary before ordinances are dropped. And many times the intelligence capability that we have is not as strong as it needs to be, and the target goes away. Some of that is improving now. up till recently, 75% of all sorties went back to the base without dropping their ordinances. And now that's improved to maybe 50%, best I can tell. But that's still not as serious an effort as we need to undertake. This president just cannot get to the point where he recognizes that this is a threat to our national security. And he's incrementally moving towards where he needs to be, but not in the way that where American leadership can be counted on.
Yes, the Kurds, the Peshmerga, have been staunch allies. They have been really the only fighting force over there that has been successful against ISIS. There's a swath of Iraq that is Kurdish. There's a swath of Syria that is Kurdish. And, of course, there's a little piece of Turkey that's Kurdish. And the Kurds have looked for a country because they say, we are different from these other guys, and we need to have a country. Did you have any thoughts about that? Are you afraid that might, tick off the Turks?
The world is incredibly complex over there, and I think the first step is to provide greater autonomy for the Kurdish region in Iraq. There's competing forces inside of, a potential Kurdistan as well that makes the possibility of a unified effort quite complicated. I think what we need to do is to engage in a way that doesn't dictate the outcome, but to provide greater autonomy in Iraq, because the federal government, until proven otherwise, is not capable of providing the basic services for people. And I think the Kurds have earned that support, and we should directly arm them in Iraq. They are, as you said, our closest ally, and they're certainly the most trained fighting force and have been quite effective.
Turning to domestic, the president is moving on guns unilaterally without any congressional approval or authorization. How did you handle guns when you were governor of Florida?
Well, I had an A+ rating with the NRA because we separated the use of guns for illegal purposes where there were severe penalties. We passed a law called 1020 Life, where if you committed a crime with the gun, you had 10 years minimum mandatory, and if you used it, it was 20, and if you wounded or killed somebody, it was life. We separated that from law-abiding citizens. In Florida today, there are 1.5, almost 1.6 million concealed weapon permit holders. That's more than any state by far in the country. We created all sorts of laws that protect law-abiding citizens to be able to embrace their Second Amendment rights, and separated where it should be, which is the right of, one of the obligations and duties of a state government or local government or federal government is to keep us safe. And in the case of the state, it's to pass laws that put severe penalties on the use of guns when you're committing crimes. And we saw dramatic reductions in crime. At the same time, we protected Second Amendment rights in a way that was the envy of the rest of the country. That approach still applies today. This president's doing the exact opposite. His first impulse, whenever there's a tragedy, whether it's San Bernardino or one of these tragic acts of derangement that have taken place in very visible ways, is to put more restrictions on law-abiding gun owners. And the net effect is it wouldn't have changed the tragedy from taking place, and it would have created an infringement on rights. And now by trying to do this by executive order, which we'll find out shortly what the specifics of this are, the net result will be that more and more people will continue to believe that the federal government is not serious about applying the rule of law. And as President of the United States, I would repeal all of these unauthorized, unconstitutional executive orders that the president has imposed, whether it's the EPA or whether it's DACA or DAPA, the immigration laws he doesn't have the authority to do, or these gun restrictions that he doesn't have the authority to do. The Congress is the place where laws have to be passed, and the president signs those into law. Our democracy is being imperiled every time the president ignores, whether it's a treaty as it relates to Iran, to your point, or ignores Congress to go around them. This is not America at its best. America at its best is one that respects our Constitution and the rule of law.
Turning again to domestic issues, the Supreme Court is going to have a couple of vacancies. I imagine the people can't stay on forever, as some are sick and some are old. Do you have any criteria that you have established for selection of judges on the federal bench, or especially the Supreme Court?
Well, first of all, they have to apply the Constitution first and foremost and not substitute their own political views with that of the Constitution. If you start with that precedent and that principle, then you can get judges that understand there is an important role for the judiciary, but it is not to supplant the legislature or to supplant the executive. I think there has to be a belief in the Constitution first and foremost. Secondly, it's important to appoint people that have a proven record. The conventional wisdom of the times over the last 20 years is, appoint someone who hasn't had a record because it'll be easier to get them through. I think we've learned the lessons of that, which is that sometimes judges veer off from their core beliefs or their principles, or at least their expressed principles. And someone that has a proven, consistent track record of respecting the Constitution as a judge, I think is hugely important. And so the third point then is that the president should pick someone with a clear record, but then be willing to fight and fight and fight, because the fight will be bigger with someone with a proven record. The left views these things as life and death matters as it relates to politics. And so the president has to make a commitment to the nominee that the president has their back. And that's what I would do. It's what I did when I was governor, appointing proven conservative jurists to the Supreme Court, and it's exactly what I would do as President of the United States.
Harry Reid did what was called the nuclear option, and up to this point, the Republicans have been very loath to use it, but he just laid it on them. And the Senate, instead of having a majority vote, it's got to be a 60% vote, and that really isn't what the Constitution specified. How would you handle that? Of course, the Senate is independent, and you'd be president, but what would you recommend they do?
Look, I learned to be respectful of the legislative process when I was governor, and I certainly would be respectful as President of the United States. But we're in perilous times right now, and I think there has to be some recognition of that. How we tax, how we regulate our entitlement system, certainly these questions of judicial nominations, we cannot have gridlock. We can't continue to work outside what the Constitution provides. As president, I will shift as much power back to the states because the 10th Amendment's as important as the First Amendment, and I believe that that's the more effective way to govern. But there are things that Washington needs to get done, and we can't just talk about it anymore. We have to begin to solve problems. And judicial nominations would be at the top of the list. So I would hope the Senate would recognize the importance of this going forward.
Last question. The game is on. I think Iowa's going to be really tough for you. I don't know. I don't even want to get a guess, but New Hampshire is one that you spent a lot of time on. And what would it take? 40,000, 50,000 votes might swing that in a multi-candidate election. What do you think? How does it look for you up there?
It looks good, and Iowa looks better than expectations as well. And you're right, these numbers are pretty small for someone who lives in Virginia or Florida. Mm-hmm. And if you have a great organization, and voter contact is the name of the game now, you can exceed expectations. And we have a national campaign beyond the first 4 states in February where we're well poised, particularly in New Hampshire. I think it's important to recognize that. I feel confident about where we are, but we're going to have to start seeing movement now. The fact is there are a lot of good people running. I just think that my proven record and the ideas I have going forward are the best to beat Hillary Clinton and the best to lead the country. And I'm going to express that view with heart and conviction over the next 6 weeks, and I believe I'll be moving forward. And I appreciate everybody's prayers and support for myself and my family as we go through this journey. It is not arduous. Dr. Robertson, this is an incredible joy and honor and privilege to be running for the presidency of the United States.
Lindsey Graham pulled out. He was a very popular the senator in South Carolina. His views align with yours quite much in terms of national defense. Is he going to endorse you, or is that too much to hope?
Well, a lot of his supporters, both in New Hampshire and South Carolina, a great majority of them have signed up, and I'm pleased with that. He had a strong group of veterans and military leaders that respected his judgment on national security issues, and many of them are coming our way. So, look, he's a great guy. I respect him enormously. I would love to have his support, but I can't. There's no insights as of today on whether he will endorse.
Well, that was an interesting interview. We've also interviewed other presidential candidates, including Ben Carson, Ohio Governor John Kasich, and Senator Rand Paul. And we're working on interviews with more candidates in the future, including the Donald. So stay tuned. We'll get you the latest update on where it's coming from. What'd you think?
He's fascinating. I really like Jeb very much. I think he's smart. I think, you know, Hillary is just a very high energy, intense competitor, and you just wonder, you know, it's
going to take a pit bull to go after her, but you need that as a Republican candidate, and well, we'll see. But anyhow, he's a very articulate, very able man, and actually the Republicans are quite blessed to have a strong field. The governor of New Jersey, the former governor, is very articulate. John Kasich's a fabulous guy. These others who are running, they're very capable. And I think Marco Rubio is getting some points, as is Ted Cruz. So then we'll see. Okay, Terry.
Well, coming up, financial expert Michelle Singletary talks about why you need a Life Happens Fund.
Your car breaks down. So rather than put that bill on your credit card, you've got it in your Life Happens Fund. And your emergency fund stays intact for the really major things in life.
More wisdom on how to protect your finances when we come back. What if 2016 could be the year that you get out of debt? Well, the good news is it can be. And to help you achieve that goal, financial expert Michelle Singletary has a plan. And she shares her plan in the second installment of our new series hosted by Gordon Robertson. It's called Protect Your Finances.
Americans love to shop. Online, offline, if it's for sale, we'll buy it. And where has all this love for shopping gotten us? Deep in debt. According to a recent Federal Reserve report, Americans are on the hook for $3.3 trillion. By the way, that number doesn't include our home mortgages. Michelle Singletary, award-winning writer of the syndicated column The Color of Money, and the author of the book, The 21-Day Financial Fast, Your Path to Financial Peace and Freedom, has a plan to help you get out of debt.
Many Americans are financing the American dream on credit, and yet it can turn into a nightmare because it's too much. They can't handle it. They have car loans, they have student loans, they have credit cards, and loans against their retirement, and then mortgages. And still there are lots of people across the country that have mortgages that they can't afford. They're really overwhelmed. They don't know what to do.
The first step in getting your financial house in order starts with understanding the difference between what we want and what we really need. Michelle suggests writing down the things you really need and the things you value most in life. Now post that list somewhere in your home where you'll see it every day. The next step in getting financially healthy is to go on a fast. That's right, you need to go on a fast from spending money.
So for 21 days, you can't go out to eat. You can't go to the movies. You can't spend any money that you don't really need to spend. You're gonna pay all your regular bills, but all the extra stuff, no coffee, nothing extra.
Another ground rule of the 21-day financial fast, no plastic. For the next 21 days, you will only use cash, no credit or debit cards. An MIT study looked at people's spending habits. The research revealed when people used credit cards, they spent more. In some cases, 100% more. When we have to hand over cold hard cash, we're much more frugal with our spending. While you're on the 21-day financial fast, keep a journal to track where your money is going. This will help you create a true monthly budget. Be sure to include all your expenses, big and small.
People try to shortchange their budget and do just the major items. You know, your rent or mortgage, car payments, if you got credit card debt, you know, insurance, you know, the top dogs. But there's a whole lot of other line items that they forget. And that's where the frustration comes, and that's why budgets don't work, because they haven't included everything.
Here are a few small budget items to include: pets, car and home maintenance, medicine, and clothing. Remember to think of your budget as your path to freedom. It's your roadmap to financial success.
Look at your budget like your GPS. It's gonna take you from here to there. And even if you fail somewhere in the middle, it's gonna help you recalculate. So I just love it, embrace it. It is freedom, it is joy to know that you've done this thing that's gonna help you meet your values and your goals.
Once you see where your money is going, it's time to get serious about getting rid of debt. Here's a simple formula that can make a big difference. It's called the Debt Dash. List all of your credit cards and their balances. Now, total it up. This is your reality check. Take a good hard look at the debt you've built up. Then start by paying off the card with the lowest balance. As each card is paid off, move on to the next, adding the previous payment amount to the new card. Keep going, working your way through the highest balance. Every debt repaid is another step to your financial freedom.
Stop saying, I'll do it tomorrow. Stop saying I'm gonna get out debt tomorrow. Tackle it today. If it's just $10 and that's all that you have, make it $10. Today is your tomorrow.
You also need to create an emergency fund for major unexpected events in your life. Things like prolonged sickness, a death in the family, or a loss of a job. A good rule of thumb is to have 3 to 6 months of your basic expenses in accessible cash on hand. And for the minor financial hits that come your way, you'll need a Life Happens Fund.
And so a Life Happens Fund allows you to spend on things that life happens. Your car breaks down. So rather than put that bill on your credit card, you've got it in your Life Happens Fund. And your emergency fund stays intact for the really major things in life.
Having healthy finances has many benefits. One important one is it can create a stronger relationship with the one you love. In the U.S., one of the top reasons couples divorce is because of money. Make sure you and your spouse safeguard your marriage by establishing some basic house rules. Be sure to keep your financial life open and transparent. No secret spending. Make purchase decisions together. Don't take your money problems outside of the family unless you're seeking professional help.
So you're not gonna call your mama and say, oh, he's spending all my money. And you're not gonna call your buddies and say, she's out shopping all the time, because they can't do anything to solve what is going on in your relationship.
Meet Myrna and Carlton Jackson. When they decided to take an honest look at their finances and follow a plan, their financial life changed dramatically.
Come up with a plan, a budget, and goals for where you want to be, and then act on it. So very swiftly, of the top 5 debts that we have, we were able to knock out 4 of them.
We've decreased our debt probably by $40,000 or so. Things are looking up pretty good for us. And now we have a plan of where we know we want to go and where we want to be.
If your finances are a mess and you're carrying a load of debt, don't be discouraged and give up. The Bible says in the book of Lamentations that God's mercies are new every morning. Trust God today with your money and ask Him to help you get a new start.
Every day is a chance for you to spend a little less, save a little bit more, not get into debt. Every day, there's an opportunity for you to get this right.
So Such wisdom, and wonderful to have it coming at the beginning of a new year when you can start fresh. Well, throughout this week, we're going to be showing you more great money saving and money making tips. It's all part of our Protect Your Finances series. And if you'd like to get a free copy of this series for yourself, just give us a call. The number's toll free. It's 1-800-759-0700, or you can log on to cbn.com. We'll send you the DVD featuring all 5 parts, or if you prefer, you can watch the series online. And best of all, it is completely free. Tomorrow, we're going to have part 3 of this series featuring special guest Dan Miller. This special-selling author is going to show you how to get the job you love in just 48 days. Boy, who doesn't want to know that? So part 3 of our Protect Your Finances series coming up tomorrow, and we want you to have all of this for your use. Well, still ahead, Anthem Light singer Alan Powell talks about his latest role in the new movie about sex trafficking, Caged No More.
And welcome back to the 700 Club. Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia says God has been good to the United States exactly because Americans have honored him. He also spoke out on the idea of government's role in religion in public life, saying there's nothing wrong with the idea of presidents and others invoking God in speeches. He said there's nothing in America's constitutional tradition that says government cannot favor religious expression in public life. Scalia spoke Saturday at a Catholic high school in Louisiana. The United Kingdom is setting out to teach that Britain is officially a Christian nation. The International Business Times reports the British Secretary of Education made the announcement. Non-faith schools must now tell students that British religious traditions are Christian when they teach about other religions. The new Department of Education guidelines state schools will not be forced to give atheist worldviews equal time with Christianity. Remember, you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website. It's cbnnews.com. Pat and Terry are back with more of the 700 Club. It's coming up right after this.
It's the fastest growing crime in the world. Every 30 seconds, another person becomes a victim of human trafficking. Every year, 1.2 million children are trafficked. And that's now the subject of a new movie. Take a look.
Caged No More tells the story of Aggie Prejean, a woman who will stop at nothing to save her 2 goddaughters. The girls have been kidnapped by their own corrupt father and sold into the sex slave industry. Alan Powell plays the girl's cousin, Will Dulon, a military soldier with the skills and passion to help Aggie find the missing girls. Together, Will and Aggie devise a plan to prevent the unthinkable.
Well, joining us now is singer and actor Alan Powell. We welcome you to the 700 Club.
Thank you. Good to be here.
People might know you more as singer, as the lead singer of the group Anthem Lights. Most of you might know that. But when did you get the acting bug? How did that happen?
Oh, you know, I've always had the bug. Film has always been the medium that has moved me the most. But I had the opportunity to be in my first film in 2012, a film called The Song. And from day one on set there, I just knew that this is something that I always wanted to do.
So it really satisfied that desire
absolutely,
in you.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Talk a little bit, if you will. Caged No More is about the issue of sex trafficking. Why this film? Why was this something that wooed you?
Well, I have 3 daughters, first of all, and so the subject is really just close to my heart and important. They sent me the script, and when I read it, I thought, this doesn't really happen here. Yeah. I don't know. I think, like so many other people, I thought it was something that happened thousands of miles away, and I could just kind of turn my back and maybe it wasn't, happening in my world. And I read the script, and it's about something that's happening in our backyard. And I called one of the producers, and I said, it's just not real, And she immediately sent me 3 or 4 articles of things that had happened in the last 60 days within 200 miles of my house.
Wow.
And I was in, I said, well, whatever I can do to help bring awareness to this present and local problem, I'll do.
Alan, do you think most people are maybe uninformed about how prevalent this is in our culture right here in the United States?
Absolutely. I would say that. there was no reason that I shouldn't have known about it before the script came to me. I don't live with my head in the sand. And so, yeah, I think it's a problem that people aren't aware, and that's certainly the purpose of this film.
Tell us a little bit about the character you play, Will. Is it Duland?
Yeah.
Duland.
Will he's born into a well-to-do family. My dad in the film is the twin brother of kind of the antagonist, the bad father who sells his kids into sex slavery. And I don't know that. I didn't know any of the things that are going on, but once I learned of the problem, I learned that my cousins have been taken away. Because of my military training, I feel that I can go and I can make a difference, and I can go over there and actually rescue the girls. Now, to be clear, we're not encouraging people to get on a plane and go actually attempt to rescue the girls. There are operations in local communities and organizations that are in our communities that are making those kinds of differences. So it's just about being aware and plugging in.
You worked with several other actors in this film.
I did, yeah.
Who did you work with, and talk about the roles they played?
Loretta Devine, who's a fantastic actress. She carried the film in the main role, and she did a great job. Matter of fact, reading the script, I was like, man, if we don't have somebody who's fantastic in that role, this is going to be a rough movie. And they did such a good job of casting that. Kevin Sorbo plays two people. Plays my dad and also the antagonist father. And that was great for me because I grew up, watching Hercules like so many of us did. Matter of fact, one of the reasons I did the movie, quite honestly, is because my character gets to beat up Kevin Sorbo's character. And I said, man,
claim to fame.
Beating up Hercules, I'm in.
Doesn't get any better.
That's right. So he did a great job. Anthony Evans plays my best friend in the movie, and we know him as an incredible singer, but he does a great job as an actor in this movie as well. So it was a really fun cast, and Cynthia Gibb plays my mom. I called my mom, and she was very excited about that. She's a big fan, and just great people, great team.
What role did faith play in this film?
Well, specifically, Loretta Devine's character is driven by the fact that she's sold and has faith that God is going to deliver her girls back to her, and she never wavers from that. There are moments when doubt creeps in, certainly, as we all deal with, but she holds fast to this promise that she feels like God has given her, that God is going to bring her girls back to her. And so that's a common thread that's woven throughout. But really, to me, the role that faith plays is just the value of human life, which I think a lot of us get from our faith, is what's driving this film, and quite honestly, what needs to drive us to want to make a difference in this particular industry. So I think that's really what's motivating it.
What do you want, what impact do you want this to have on people who see it regarding sex trafficking? Because it's such a huge issue today, one that I think has grown in our country. I don't think it's always been where it's at today.
Yeah.
What do you want people to walk away with?
I want people to be aware of the problem. I want them to have the same realization that I had after I read the script for the first time. That is, excuse me, this is not something that's happening thousands of miles away. This is something that is happening in your backyard. You just need to open your eyes and be aware of it. It really is about raising awareness. That's the point of the film, because there are things that we can do, whoever's watching, you can do, you and I can do right now to have an impact in this industry.
Yeah, it's encouraging that there are a number of really solid organizations who are doing
hundreds
really good work
in the States, in our country, that are doing incredible things to make an impact in people's lives.
I mentioned that people would most likely know you as a singer, now as an actor after this is one of several movies that you've done. What's next? I mean, what's your heart desire now?
Those things.
More.
I start filming again in February on the next movie, which I will be excited to tell you about. When the time comes. A lot of exciting things happening there, and it'll be a year full of movies, and I never stop doing music. So it's just been. I feel very blessed, and most importantly, I've had my family and 3 girls myself.
It is a huge blessing to be able to do the things that you love.
Providing for the people you love, doing something you love, to me is what
gift.
It's always about. So
absolutely. Well, we just wish you the best and look forward to seeing the movie. I want to tell all of you that the movie Cage No More opens in theaters on January 22nd. So coming up just around the corner, look for it and then be inspired to do something to make a difference. Alan, thank you. Great to have you here. Well, still ahead, a fresh batch of Bring It On questions for 2016. May wants to know, what is the difference between one's soul and one's spirit? Stay tuned. Pat's going to talk about that coming up.
To listen to our top songs of the week, go to CBN Radio at cbn.com.
Welcome back to the 700 Club. This is your program today, and we're glad you're with us. Arlie is a single mom who lives in El Salvador. She supports herself and her 3 children on just a few dollars a day. All she needed was a little help to make a better life for herself and her children. And that's exactly what she got, courtesy of your ministry.
11-year-old Brian watches his 2 younger sisters every day while his mom goes to work. She was afraid to take the younger children with her to the market. Brian had to drop out of school to take on the role of babysitter.
I had no choice but to leave them with Brian. Because the girls are so young, I didn't want cars to hit them where I sell plantains.
One day, Arlie met someone from Operation Blessing and told her about their situation. A few days later, we arrived at her home with a grill and other items needed to start a business selling corn tortillas. Because this is a staple food in the community, everyone started buying them from Arlie on their way home from work.
I felt so good and so surprised by the success of the business. I can't believe how much I'm selling to my new clients. I knew it was God working through you that made this happen for us.
Arlie now makes 3 to 4 times as much as she used to earn, some days even more. And because she's now working from home, Brian is able to head back to school with a new uniform and supplies, courtesy of Operation Blessing.
I am so excited to go back to school. I like it very much.
Thanks, Operation Blessing, for giving us hope. God bless you now and forever.
Isn't that beautiful? That's what you can do, folks. You can help somebody, give them a new life. Isn't that wonderful? Just took an oven. I mean, we're talking about big deals, just an oven. You bring the oven in and she's making tortillas and then she's selling them. She's been empowered, and then her children will be empowered, and then the neighborhood is empowered. That's what we're doing, and that's what God wants us to do, to give hope to people that don't have it. By the way, when you join the 700 Club, I want to give you something called Be Healed. And we have healing scriptures and prayer for healing and things that you would like to hear and witness. And also, I want to tell you about Pledge Express. If you will tell your bank or institution, financial institution, that you would like to every month have a certain amount taken and sent directly to CBN, then it'll save us a lot of money and save you money, and we're able to have enough money to give you something every month extra. So it's a teaching called Powerful Life that we'll send out to you that I think will bless you more. So the number is on your screen. Please call in and say you can count on me as a member of the 700 Club. Help us to help others. Terry.
Time for email.
Let's go for it.
Let's bring it on. This is May, who says, what is the difference between one's soul and one's spirit?
All right, go back to the Old Testament. God took dust of the earth and he breathed on it. And out of that came a living soul. Now, the body, soma, the breath, pneuma, is spirit. Spirit coming together with the elemental part of the earth brings forth, the Hebrew word is nephesh, which is a soul. And that's the difference. The spirit comes from God, and we all have a spirit which responds to him. But when you couple that with the body we have, it is a self, it is a soul. There are other descriptions of soul, but that's enough for now. Okay.
This is Angela Pat, who says, Pat, is there any scripture in the Bible to ask the Lord to remove certain people from our lives, such as gossipers, people who wrongfully use us, backbiters, and busybodies?
Well, you can read some of the Psalms where David is crying out to God to deliver him from the evildoers, and the Bible is full of that. You know, smite them and do bad things to them. But I think Jesus said, love your enemies, do good to them, and despitefully use you. So I think you go to the New Testament, you find a different attitude. Mm-hmm. But I can't point to something in the New Testament that says, here's a prayer that says, get rid of X, Y, and Z. I don't believe it's there. But we do have that deliver us from evil. And, you know, but, well, you're not supposed to fellowship with ungodly people. The Bible makes that very clear. What fellowship has Christ with Belial? So it's there. All right.
This is Jessica who says, is it bad to ask God to enable me to win the lottery or a cash sweepstakes?
You know, listen, you can ask God anything you want to. He can always say no. But I honestly believe that what you need to do is to say, God, give me a useful occupation where I can earn some money and not try to hit the big score on the lottery. I think it is absolutely contrary to the Bible to get this get-rich quick scheme. Whereas if you look at the way the exponential curve works, a little bit, a compounding interest, a little by little by little by little, it gets to be huge. And that's God's way of creating wealth. Well, I think that's all the time we've got. So thank you so much for being with us. And we leave you with today's Power Minute from 2 Corinthians. If anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. Old things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new. Well, on tomorrow's program, tips to get the body you've wanted and the job of your dreams. Man, this is a success week here on the 700 Club. So for Terry and all of us, this is Pat Robertson. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.